Welcome to another After the Wreckage podcast. I'm Nathan Ross, your host, and this is my wife, Melissa Ross, and we're going to talk to you today about what you voted for. Now, if you follow us on Instagram, when we're about to do a podcast, we put a topics up that we want you to choose on the poll.
Also known as a poll.
Yes.
Yeah.
A poll.
A poll.
And she's in a sassy mood today, guys. Just to let you know, she's in a sassy mood. Before we even came on here, she's in a sassy mood.
That's why he's giggling, because I made him laugh.
So anyway, we're going to talk about what you voted for, and it's why do men lie after they've been caught, after the affair, after it's all come out? Why do they lie?
Why do they still continue to lie?
Why do they still continue to lie? Why do they continue to be half-hearted about owning and being transparent? And
we've had quite a few women bring us this question, haven't we?
I think it's a good topic to talk about. So we're going to, as always, we don't have paper, we don't have things to work off. What we tend to work off is, one, our experience with working with couples and individuals, our experience of working in our face-to-face and online clinic, and also we work off our own opinions, but also we work off what we think is going to help you.
Well, we're a living testimony, aren't we?
We are. And so
we're talking from experience and obviously things that have worked for couples that we've helped in our clinic.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about why do men lie. Why do you think men lie?
After the affair has already been found out, or before?
Yeah, after.
Okay. I think it's damage limitation.
Damage limitation.
Yeah. So what she doesn't know won't hurt her. If I don't tell every gory detail, I'm not going to be painted out to be the bad guy as much.
Yeah.
I personally think, and I think we answered this on a story today, that the man can have a fear of, if the woman isn't going to want to rebuild with him anyway,
what's the point?
Why does she need to know all of the detail?
Very true.
So we could get into those.
Yeah, I think that's a good surface level stuff. I think when we start delving deep into why do men lie, I think the reality is they've learned to become mask wearers. And what I mean by that is they've learned to put on a mask through the journey of life. And what we usually tend to explore with men is there's been some traumatic event or some type of trauma that's happened to them where they've had to learn to self-soothe. And that really looks like becoming emotionally disconnected. And so they start becoming people pleasers. They start to wear a mask, and they do that as they go through life. When men start to lie after infidelity or even before infidelity, it's because they don't know who they really are, and they're not sure if they're going to be accepted. And so when they get caught and have the affair, they're worried, like you said, that their partner isn't going to accept them and want them back. They're worried about making more damage and hurting the person they love. And so they do damage limitation, which is what you said. But also, they're not used to having this type of conflict, because most men are on this pathway of having an affair and creating infidelity. When they become people pleasers, they don't like conflict. They become very conflict avoidant. They become very emotionally disconnected and detached, and rather base it on, I must be a good person because everyone likes me, or I must be liked by so many people, so I must be doing something right. And when the infidelity comes out, their coping strategies and self-soothing techniques do not work.
Should we shed some light on our story in terms of what we went through and exposing the truth? Because the truth really didn't come out fully until we started to rebuild.
Until we sat down with your A4 pieces of paper.
5 pages. Front and back.
Friends. So, okay, how far are we going back?
What I'm talking about specifically is the periods of time where I would find golden nuggets, if you want to call them that, of things that were leading toward
things that
you having an affair.
With this certain person.
Yeah, things that were sort of being accidentally left around, or things that I had found that show that you were still having contact with this specific person. And at each point, at each of those checkpoints, you had an opportunity to completely come clean.
Yep.
But you chose not to.
Yep.
And the information that you chose to share at that time was only specific to that particular bit of evidence that had come out.
But also, it was enough to
pacify,
make the scent go, for me to carry on.
And this is a pattern that you probably would like to or need to be aware of if you're in this situation, that as you go through, or as your partner's going through this infidelity, you will go through periods, most likely, of gaslighting and manipulation along the way. And I feel the reason that you choose not to fully come clean at that point is because the load's just too big. If I expose myself now, I've got to unravel this whole entire situation, and I'm not quite ready for that yet. So I would rather carry on doing what I'm doing with the AP, keep my wife or my partner sweet at home, tell her the things that she needs to hear. If she finds things along the way, I'll try and talk myself out of them. I'll try and make you think that they're not really what they are, which is what you did.
But also, on top of that, you don't know what lies your husband or partner has told the AP. So then you've got that other side of it. We're not together anymore. We're just cohabiting.
Or we don't sleep together
anymore.
We're just going on holiday together for the kids.
Or we're working towards divorce and the papers are getting finalised, and things like that. So then he's having to lie to you, the wife, or the long-term partner. But then also you don't know what lies he's having to then say to the AP to keep her sweet.
And an overarching thing of this whole situation is that once you start telling lies, the web forms very quickly.
Now, people don't want to talk about this, and I'm going to talk about this.
Oh, go on then.
Okay, and this is probably what most people don't realise. And you probably won't realise it because you think, I don't actually care. But this is for the men that have or continue to have an affair or coming out and looking to rebuild. The stress and the
is there even a word to try and
I'm just trying to think of the word that men go through. Yes, they've done something stupid, made a stupid decision, made a stupid choice, but
the weight of it
all comes to a point where and this is where I think some men just want to get caught, because the weight of it all, and when I say get caught, it's either they make a decision to leave to get rid of the stress and weight, or they want to get caught and they do something stupid like leave their phone open with a message on, so they get caught. But the weight and stress that the lies bring to your AP, to your wife, to yourself, no one ever talks about that, because you know what? No one wants to talk about it because it's like, who cares? You brought it on yourself, which is true. But that stress is enough to make men become mentally ill.
It manifests in exhaustion, fatigue,
autopilot. Just literally, you're managing. And
in extreme cases, like you say, depression and anxiety as well.
And outbursts of anger, frustration, violence. That it can also, the stress management can lead to porn, intense porn.
And also, let's not forget this, again, overarching fundamental part of this that affects the victim on the side of it is the constant goading for an argument to deflect you taking responsibility.
So
quite frequently, you and I would have
I would make an argument out of nothing.
Quite frequently.
Just to say to you, I'm going away the weekend.
Yeah. Quite frequently, you would make arguments with me out of nowhere for no reason.
And you'd be like, what the hell's going on?
Just to give yourself a reason or an excuse or a justification to go off and do what you're doing.
You're always like that. You're always causing arguments. You're not even letting me do what I want to do. Why can't you just be happy for me?
The worst is you're getting in the way of work.
You're hindering me from making...
And that's specifically for people who are self-employed entrepreneurs. Obviously, work is very important and nothing, in that world can interrupt that when you're in that zone. And I think for me it was a good manipulation tactic from your behalf to shut me up.
Yeah, of course, and
because I didn't want to be the reason that we were failing in business.
Yeah. So really, before we look at why do men lie after, let's look at why do men lie before, because what they're unfolding with the ego, the pride, but also the lustful nature, the self-soothing nature, the dopamine hits. They want to keep that going, so they're going to lie and get themselves caught up in all these type of webs and tangles to the AP, to your partner, to your wife. And so that's why they lie, because they want to continue this fixation they've got. They don't want the AP to find out what they're truly like. They don't want the wife to find out what they're truly like. So they continue the snowballs of lies. And that goes deeper down the rabbit hole. That's then when men start to lose who they are, what their values were, their standards were. And ask yourself the question, have you said to yourself, I don't even know this man anymore? Who is he? The man I married 25 years ago isn't the man I've got now. The man I married 3 years ago, got with 2 years ago, is not the man I know now. Because he has lost himself amongst the tangle of webs, deceit, and lies. So that's even beforehand, while he's got his stress and burden that he has caused himself on top of him.
And what would you say to men who are in that thick of the web of lies at the moment?
I don't think you could say anything.
No.
That would make them change. Because unless they hit rock bottom, unless something happens drastically, like they get knocked over or run over or something, and they see a light all the way out, when you're in that thick of it all. Because
a lot of women, we get a lot of messages saying, when is he going to realise?
And sometimes, like myself, and I know for other men, they hit rock bottom. That depends on where rock bottom is for them. Some men don't hit rock bottom, they just realise the error of their ways and turn around. But when
sometimes pride and ego gets in the way, and they never want to admit that it was a mistake.
And they just continue on that slope. And they could get with the AP, they go and live with the AP like I did. They go and get married with the AP, they go and have other children. And it could be 20 years down the line when they think, actually, my true love was the woman I was with.
Somebody asked about the statistic today, didn't they?
Yeah, we looked at
what percentage of relationships that start from an affair actually end up working out. And it was between 3 and 5%.
Yeah.
So the odds are not stacked with you.
Because it was built on lies. Now, you've got all that going on beforehand. Now, let's look about so you get caught. Okay, they get caught. They're like...
Now, get caught in the sense of everything is exposed, because let's say you got caught about 10 times.
Yeah, okay. Let's get to a point where everything's fully exposed. Okay. And you're sitting down, your wife has got the texts, your wife has got the messages, the emails, she's got the pictures, the AP's contacted her, said your husband's been having an affair with me, blah, blah, blah. Their husband's contacted you. However it's come out, it's come out.
Yep. And
you sat down with your partner, your husband, and you're like, look, I know. And they start to play it down. Or they start to minimise the impact that they're actually doing. Oh, no, it was just a fling. It was just a one-night stand.
Or deflect the blame.
Or deflect. Well, you weren't giving me sex. And all the things
we haven't been getting on for a long time.
Yeah. The best one is, it's your fault.
I had no choice.
I had no choice. And I wanted attention. I've been crying out for attention by you.
The worst thing I think you could say to the victim of an affair in that situation is, if you would have, and talk about all the things that if they would have done, you wouldn't have had the affair. And
I think that's a different podcast, because there's so much that the man needs to understand, that the woman was crying out before that to try and get your attention. You were just justifying it by not seeing it, by going elsewhere. But anyway, it's all come out. And you're sitting there, and you have two options as a man. The two options. In my case, I didn't have options, because you bought the 5 pages front and back and wanted to know the truth.
Oh, you did.
I was joking.
You did have options.
No, I did have. We all have options as a man. You have two options.
Yeah.
One option is to bear all, show the real you, the man who was a coward but is looking to rebuild with transparency and honesty and wanting a fresh new start, to release and become free of the lies and deceit that you were working with and on with your AP,
to lift the chains
to break the chains away from you around your neck, and to step into the light and move forward. You have that option, or you have the other option, which is what you've got into this point in the first place, of looking to minimise, self-soothe, looking to artificially look like you're sorry and not. Turn it into you're the victim and she's to blame, your wife is to blame. Turn it into a scenario or circumstances that you can get through it. All you need to do is say sorry. So,
and we talked about this before, didn't we? There's no but in I'm sorry.
No, there's no but in I'm sorry. I'm sure we made some weird joke about butts, but anyway, see more butts it was. And we've just did it again. Anyway, so
funny.
So there's two options. Now, most men, and I would probably say a high percentage of men, do the second first, because they don't know how much you know.
Again, damage limitation.
Damage limitation. So they go down the self-sabotage route. Does she know as much as she makes out? Is it just a text? I've got away with a text before when she found that text 2 years ago. I've got away with this, so can I do this? And X, Y, Z, A, B, C. And so they try to gaslight, love bomb, lie, show you half-truths. And that is all self-soothing techniques. That is all very egotistical. But also it's this. They're testing the water. They're testing to see what your reaction is. Okay? What's my wife going to do? Is she actually going to leave me? Because if she found out before the little texts and stuff like that, she won't leave me again. So what I'm going to do yes, more has come out, but I'm going to just test the waters and give you some, I'm really sorry. But our sex life wasn't good. And maybe if we were getting on, this wouldn't have happened.
Well, manipulators who are good at their job, shall we call them, will push the boundary so far and test your reaction. If they get past that boundary, then they'll push it even further.
And so what they do is they'll continue to lie about the full half-truths.
It becomes a pattern of learnt behaviour.
And it becomes a power struggle
and
a control struggle from them. And so they push the boundary so much that you actually have lost why the conversation started and what you actually know. They start becoming manipulative, frustrated, and start lying and start things that, oh, you're always like this. So then you start to have a bit of guilt because you think you've pushed your partner into doing this. So then you shut down. He wins and thinks, well, I've got away with it because I've managed to curve the ball again. And the reality is it goes back into self-sabotage and back into the circle. That's if you choose number 2. And the reason why they do that is because it's become a habit, learned behaviour. They've learned to self-soothe by blaming others. They've learned to self-soothe by making sure that they're the victim. And as long as I get my needs met, I'm okay. Now, the other option, which is option 1, which is the one that I did after many years of hitting, after hitting rock bottom on Christmas and saying, look, I really want to work us and get back and better, was we sat down in a public place, and we say this to a lot of our clients.
And this was a boundary of mine that I said to you, we needed to, and I needed to make very clear with you, if we were actually ever going to be able to rebuild anything.
And up until this point, let's be honest, I didn't want this conversation.
And let's be honest, up until that point, I had boundaries that I didn't stick to.
Yeah.
Because
so it was your fault. No,
everybody, when they get married, everybody who's in a relationship has this uncommunicated expectation that your partner's not going to cheat on you.
Standards, yeah.
So every time that I'd found something out, every time that things pointed to what I really knew was the truth, I was kidding myself, and I kept giving you the benefit of the doubt.
And I kept pushing the boundaries, you kept dropping the boundaries.
Yeah.
And so it was, in a way, we were both what's the word?
We were self-destructive.
Yeah.
Self-destructive.
Self-destructive.
Yeah. So I absolutely knew during that period of time, and this will be another podcast where we talk about how my self-care looked when we were separated.
Yeah.
But during that time, I absolutely knew that for me personally, I had allowed Nathan to cross very strong boundaries that I had in the beginning. And I don't even know how I got to that point where I kept allowing it. I think ultimately it was just fear of losing my family takes over.
And I knew that.
Yeah. So you used it to your advantage. Yeah. But I knew that if we were ever going to rebuild and repair our relationship, I had to have very clear boundaries that I wasn't willing to budge on. And this was one of them. Yeah. And I remember us having a conversation where I said to you, I need you to take accountability for every single thing that you have done, that you know you've done, I know you've done, but you are yet to admit to me. Because up until that point, you were still trying to say that your relationship with her hadn't started until after we broke up, which was an out-and-out lie, because I knew it had been going on for 3+ years. And all of the things that had led up to that, I needed you to take full and complete accountability. And if you weren't prepared to do that, I wasn't gonna rebuild with you.
And so we sat down in a public place so we couldn't scream at each other. And
well, we called it a safe space. So doing it in our own home with our child here wasn't appropriate. Doing it at somebody else's house that we knew, again, wasn't appropriate.
So somewhere neutral.
We kept it somewhere that was public, so we had to kind of control our emotions.
And 3 hours later,
it was a really difficult conversation.
It was probably one of the hardest things we've ever done as a team together.
You didn't want to answer the questions any more than I wanted to ask them.
No, but we did. And we got raw, we got honest. And I
think during that conversation I had, and there has been subsequent questions after that, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But the bare bones of all the things that I needed for you to take accountability for and all the lies that I needed you to admit, it was hard hitting, hearing them one after the other other.
And sometimes you do, and let's be real, you didn't want to hear some of the answers.
No.
And I didn't want to tell them because I knew how much it was going to hurt you.
But I knew it was necessary because I needed to be able to close that chapter. And what I mean by that is, that doesn't mean I'm healed. That doesn't mean we're
finished.
It's all done.
Yeah.
It just means I can now put to bed the questions that had gone on in my head. And that's why we always talk about having that really important transparent conversation before you even attempt to rebuild.
From a man's point of view, and this is to you men out there looking to repair and rebuild and questioning or thinking you're telling half-truths, there is no better freedom than getting everything off your chest. Okay, I remember walking out that place after,
taking a big deep breath.
Yeah, take a deep breath. I don't think we talked for like an hour or so after. I remember we just came home. I just sat there.
We just decompressed.
And I remember thinking to myself, what a relief! What a relief! Not because she stayed around. Yes,
and not because you said things that were hurtful.
Yeah, no. But the relief was I got everything off my chest.
Sits heavy.
There were no secrets. There was no lies. There was no deceit.
Yeah.
It was just me raw, and I just remember thinking, what a relief.
We can start from here.
Yeah. And even at that moment when I did it, we weren't really thinking about, because you hadn't given me a defined answer about rebuilding. I had wanted to, and so we shared that, but you were like, well, there's a lot more work we need to do. You've got to go to therapy and start your therapy session, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, because again, myself, like many of the other women that we speak to, they want to know the why.
Yeah, why?
Because without knowing the why, you have no assurity that it's not going to happen again.
And I knew deep down why, but I wanted to explore it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get to the nitty gritty why. And for those of you that aren't and don't know your whys, it's really important. Like for me, it was I was brought up in a household where my mom was a manic depressant. She had massive issues with depression from a very, very young age. She had agoraphobia, so at one point I didn't leave the house for a year from a young child. And there's lots of emotional disconnections. I saw love as a very transactional. My mum was because she had emotional issues, she used to overload me with her emotions.
So there was attachment issues
issues.
You also, along the years, and I'm not speaking for you, but have had body image issues.
Yeah, muscle dysmorphia and things like, and a lot of things like that. So there was a lot of things going on for me at the time.
A lot of seeking external validation.
Yeah, seeking external validation, people pleasing, mask wearing, not knowing who I really was. And it's really important as a man, if you're looking to rebuild and repair, that you do the hard work to find out why you are the way you are, why you did what you did.
Yeah, because we ask the question, who are you when you take all of your status away? Yeah. If you're not a business owner, if you're not a dad, if you're not a son or a friend.
I put something up the other day about business owners, entrepreneurs.
Who are you?
Because most men that we work with are entrepreneurs and business owners. A small section aren't, but most entrepreneurs are great at being an entrepreneur because of the validation it brings, the reward it brings. I do X, I get a reward. I do A, I get a reward. And that then gives them self-value, high self-value, self-worth. But then if you take it all away, like we own businesses, and if we took that status away...
And for you, that is kind of what happened.
Oh, yeah. And so it's really important that you understand that when it comes down to, when you start looking at lies, that the man understands that the release is going to give you when you start telling the truth. Okay, the
truth will set you free, and it's a cheesy saying,
a cliche word, but
it's so true.
Yeah. And it's the first foundational stronghold you need in moving forward.
And it's the first big step, I suppose, in showing your partner that you're willing to change.
Yeah. Your partner, your wife, the woman you're in a relationship with, can't move forward until she's got the full story.
And the worst thing that could happen is you tell a half-truth or a partial truth, you do lots of work to try and rebuild trust,
we see it happening.
And then something else comes out that you neglected to say, whether on purpose or not, and then all that happens is it takes your trust journey right back to square one.
I think as a therapist, that's probably one of our most frustrating things, because if you do work with us on a one-to-one, my first question is, and our first question is with your clients is, do you know the whole truth, or have you told the whole truth? Because what happens is it's so frustrating that you do lots of work, you do the therapy, you go through the tools that we give you, you get to a point where she's starting to just tiny traits of wanting to trust you again. And then she finds a text that you've forgot about, or she sees an email that you haven't been trustworthy, or someone texts her, or the AP tells her something different, and you're like, 6 months down the road, all done.
It's destroyed then,
It's destroyed. She goes back to D-Day and that pain gets relived again. And it's harder then to relive and rework that again. So if you are looking to rebuild and repair, become fully transparent, become fully honest with what's happened. Sit down, take the hard questions. Stop preserving and protecting yourself. Okay, your lies will get you further down that rabbit hole rather than closer to your partner and building a firm foundation.
And also realising that you're not actually helping your partner in the long run by not being completely truthful. Yes, the open, transparent conversation is really difficult. It's difficult for you to talk about. It's difficult for the partner to hear, but it's not a setback. No. And I think people can be fearful of having that conversation because they feel like it's going to be they feel like it's going to be a setback, that we're moving backwards. We're going to keep bringing all these things up again. And we've been through that period. And I remember saying to you, because you kept saying to me when I would come with random various questions that would pop up into my head,
and they were
post rebuilding, and you would say, do we have to keep going over it? And I reassure, and again, me having to reassure you at that time, but again, this is just advice that we're giving to you from our own experience and from experience that we've had with clients as well, is that you mustn't be disheartened by having those conversations, because every time you do, it isn't a step backwards. It's one step closer to emotional connection.
Yeah, and that's really important. So I hope that covers and helps you in looking at the aspect of why do men lie after their infidelity. And as always, guys, we appreciate you. So if you could, we do this for free. We love doing these podcasts, and we're trying to make them as regular as you can alongside our clinic online and face-to-face. So please hit the subscribe button so then you know when our new podcast is coming.
And the next one is going to be about my self-care journey during the separation process, because we've had a lot of questions. I've had a lot of DMs, you've had a lot of messages about the period of time where the woman has been left, perhaps the man has left her for the AP, or you're going through separation.
You do this work with your clients.
How does that look for you during that time? Yeah. How can you focus on you, things that you can do to rebuild yourself? And no matter what happens then, whether you get back with your partner or not, you are empowered. You're more healed as a person. So guys, we'll talk about that next time.
We're going to talk about that next time. Please like, please subscribe, please leave a comment. Even if it's just love your podcast, it helps with getting our podcast and our channel out there. And as always, guys, we thank you for your support. A few things coming up on the 26th of July. We've got our fourth question and answer free live Zoom call. The link will be in the description, so please click to enroll and register.
They fill up quick, don't they?
They fill up quick. I've opened 70 spots this time.
Okay.
We had 15 and there were 4, so I've opened 70 up this time. Also, guys, we are looking to open up our own supporting group in the next few months, aren't we? So we're going to finalise that and send some details, so just to make you aware of that. Otherwise, this is After the Wreckage podcast. I'm Nathan Ross.
I'm Melissa Ross, and
we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.